Imagine standing in the middle of a really damp plant nursery.
Okay.
You are surrounded by heavy greenery. You've got that smell of wet potting soil, and you are slowly, I mean really carefully, creeping closer to a resting dragonfly.
Which is already impressive because those things are fast.
Right. But it's perched right there on a closed lotus bed,
Mm-hmm.
and you get within 10 centimeters.
Huh?
Then 8. Then 5 centimeters.
Whoa.
Yeah, you are so close you can practically see the individual microscopic facets of its compound eyes. And it doesn't flinch.
That's wild.
It doesn't fly away. It just sits there, completely still, staring right back at the lens.
It's a crazy visual, right? Because normally you get within, 2 feet of a dragonfly and it's gone in a blur.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, their vision and reflexes are evolutionarily designed to detect that exact kind of slow-moving threat.
Exactly.
But in this scenario, the photographer is literally holding a piece of glass centimeters from its face, and there is this strange, almost suspended truce between them.
And that incredibly vivid, highly specific standoff is exactly where we are starting today's deep dive.
Yeah, it's a great starting point.
We are looking at a single blog post dated April 13th, 2026. It's published on a site called qianmeng.org.
Right.
It's titled Notes on Photography Part 234, A Macro Photography Dilemma, and it's written by a guy named Ang.
And, on the surface, it reads like a pretty standard piece of internet writing.
Yeah.
Just a hobbyist photographer reviewing a picture he took and talking about his camera gear.
Right, but we are going to use this one post as a keyhole. Because while the text begins with a very, modern technological dilemma about what kind of camera to buy.
Yeah, the gear question.
Exactly. The mission of this deep dive is actually a psychological expedition.
Absolutely.
We are exploring the mind of a self-described old software plumber who has systematically, and I mean deliberately, turned his entire life into an open-source database. Every thought, every hobby. Okay, let's unpack this.
What's fascinating here is the contrast, right, between the organic, spontaneous subject of his photograph, this wild dragonfly, and the incredibly structured architectural way he processes the entire world.
It really is.
Yeah.
So let's stay in that plant nursery for a second. Ang mentions he wasn't even setting up a deliberate professional photo shoot.
He was just kind of testing things out. Right?
Yeah, just snapping a few test shots to find a good composition. He actually says the nursery owner is standing nearby, watching him, probably wondering why this guy is just aggressively invading the personal space of a lotus bud.
Right, like what is this guy doing?
Exactly. But he gets to that 5-centimeter mark, the dragonfly stays put, and he captures the image.
Which leads directly to the actual dilemma in the title of his post, because when he gets home and reviews the image quality, this deeper question sort of emerges.
Yeah, he starts really evaluating his equipment. He asks himself if he should finally invest in a dedicated mirrorless or DSLR camera strictly for macro photography, making those extreme close-ups of bugs and flowers.
Right, the traditional route.
Or, given how far the technology has come, would he be better off just buying a used flagship smartphone with a really solid macro lens built right in?
And it perfectly illustrates the evolution of consumer technology over the last, decade. Ang really reflects on how much the landscape has shifted since he first started taking pictures.
Yeah, I mean, this shift is massive.
It is. He points out that today, even a mid-range mobile phone is remarkably capable of macro work. And the reason a phone can even compete with a bulky camera lens comes down to computational photography.
Right, because the glass itself is tiny.
Exactly. The physical glass on a phone is minuscule, but the software inside the phone is taking dozens of pictures in a millisecond, stacking them, analyzing the light, and artificially sharpening the edges using algorithms.
Wow.
Yeah, the software is doing all the heavy lifting that the physical lens used to do.
Which is incredibly fitting for a software engineer to recognize,
Yeah.
He knows the algorithms are bridging that physical gap. And the phone has one ultimate trump card, right? Sheer portability.
Oh, you cannot beat the form factor.
Yeah.
The convenience of having a highly capable camera that just slides into your pocket, immediately available without a second thought, it completely changes how and when you capture the world.
Yeah.
Ang acknowledges that dedicated mirrorless cameras are getting smaller, but the friction of carrying a separate device still feels heavy compared to just, a phone.
I really want to focus on that word, friction. Because the traditional tech review analogy is comparing a dedicated camera to a specialized craftsman's tool and the smartphone to a Swiss Army knife.
Right, the multi-tool versus the specific tool.
Yeah, but I think it's actually more about the friction of the process. Think of using a heavy DSLR, like brewing a meticulous pour-over coffee.
Oh, I like that comparison.
Right. You have to weigh the beans, grind them to the exact right coarseness, heat the water to a very specific temperature, and pour it in those slow circles.
It's a whole ritual.
It requires specific tools and it takes time. But the smartphone is the pod coffee machine on your counter. You just push a button and you instantly get coffee.
The output is similar, sure, but the input is completely different.
Exactly. But here's my question. Does removing that friction dilute the intentionality of the art?
That's a great question.
With a dedicated camera, you have to decide, I am going out to take photos today. You pack the bag, you select the lens, you wear the strap.
You're mentally preparing for it.
Right. That ritual prepares your brain to see the world photographically.
Yeah.
If you just whip out a phone, because it happens to be there when a dragonfly lands, does making the process easier inherently make the experience lesser?
Well, that is the philosophical core of his dilemma. Does the resistance of the medium add value to the art?
Yeah, does the pour-over taste better just because you worked for it?
Right. There's an argument for that. But Aang isn't just looking at this as some romantic artist mourning the loss of a ritual. He is evaluating this as a systems engineer.
That's true.
He is carefully weighing utility against flexibility. A dedicated camera offers superior raw data uncompressed pixels, true optical depth of field, but the phone offers a completely frictionless data capture system.
And that obsessive need to evaluate the utility of his tools doesn't just stop when he puts the camera down. It completely spills over into the very platform where he uploaded the dragonfly photo in the first place.
Yeah, the blog itself.
If you navigate to the About section of his blog, keonmang.org, you get a really clear window into who this person is. He actually calls himself an old software plumber.
Which is such a brilliant self-descriptor.
I love it.
It completely strips away all the inflated Silicon Valley prestige of being a, developer or an architect.
Right. No ego at all.
None. It frames coding as foundational, unglamorous, but absolutely necessary labor. He is fixing digital leaks, connecting data pipes, and making sure the information flows from one place to another.
Yeah, and he notes that he spends his nights tinkering with floss.
Yeah.
And for anyone listening outside the tech world, that stands for free labor and open source software.
And we really have to emphasize that the open source philosophy is critical to understanding Aang.
Okay, tell us why.
Well, in traditional commercial software, the underlying source code is hidden. It is proprietary, locked away by corporations, so you can't see how the program is built, and you definitely can't modify it.
Right, it's a black box.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Open source software is the exact opposite. The code is entirely public. Anyone can read it, learn from it, change it, and distribute it.
It's all about community.
Yeah, it relies on a global community of developers collaborating to improve the tools for everyone, for free.
And Aang deeply supports the infrastructure that keeps this ecosystem alive.
Yeah.
He explicitly lists the organizations he backs on his site.
He does.
The Electronic Frontier Foundation, or EFF, which provides legal defense for digital privacy and free speech, the Free Software Foundation, the Tor Project, which creates encrypted networks to protect anonymous communication, and Wikipedia.
And you notice these aren't just random charities.
No.
They form the pillars of a very specific ideology. Aang fundamentally believes that human knowledge should not be hidden behind corporate walled gardens, paywalls, or just, fleeting social media feeds. Knowledge must be accessible, decentralized, and preserved.
And he doesn't just believe it. He actually lives it. He applies the open source software philosophy to his own mind.
Yes.
When you look at the sidebar of his blog, you see his post archive sorted by year and month. And the sheer volume of data he has made public it's astonishing.
It is a visualization of relentless consistency. I mean, it's staggering.
Let's look at the actual math here. In 2011, he published 26 posts over the entire year.
Which is a very normal cadence for someone starting a casual blog.
Yeah, a couple of thoughts a month. Fast forward through the 2010s, and the frequency just steadily climbs. In 2020, he hits 366 posts.
Right. And 2020 was a leap year, meaning he averaged exactly one post a day.
Exactly one a day. Then in 2021, it jumps to 541 posts.
He is testing his capacity there, like optimizing his workflow.
Right. And then he locks into a rhythm that is almost terrifyingly precise. In 2022, 2023, and 2025, he publishes exactly 730 posts each year.
Think about that number.
And in 2024, another leap year, he publishes exactly 732 posts.
That is exactly 2 posts a day, every single day.
Without fail. Think about how difficult it is for the average person to keep a New Year's resolution to journal just once a day.
Oh, it's impossible. Most of us tap out by the second week of February.
Exactly. Because we get tired or busy, or we simply feel like we have nothing profound to say today.
Yeah.
But Aang didn't miss a single day for years. Weekends, holidays, vacations, sick days, 2 posts a day.
Because for him, it isn't about waiting for some profound burst of inspiration. It is a systematic archiving process.
A backup.
Yes, he is running a continuous daily backup of his brain directly to the public internet.
Wow.
Most people leave behind what we call digital exhaust, right? Scattered, passive traces of their existence through likes, fragmented comments, or just algorithmic scrolling.
Yeah, just noise.
Right.
Yeah.
But Aang is deliberately constructing a permanent, searchable digital library.
And if you assume an old software plumber writing 2 posts a day is just dumping endless strings of dry code into a database, a quick glance at his archive totally shatters that assumption.
Oh, completely.
If we take just a 2-week snapshot, let's say the first 15 days of April 2026, the breadth of his curiosity is deeply impressive.
He is a true polymath. He's exploring multiple, highly technical and biological disciplines simultaneously.
Yeah. In early April 2026, he publishes Notes on Haskell Programming, Part 109. Part 109.
That's a lot of Haskell.
He is writing about handling, parsing, and type-safe programming.
Right.
But then, published right next to those technical logs on the exact same days, he uploads Notes on Dieting Part 111, where he meticulously tracks his body weight and caloric data, and Notes on Exercises Part 18, where he breaks down the mechanics of physical movement. Here's where it gets really interesting, though.
Okay, lay it on me.
To really appreciate how his mind works, we should probably clarify what Haskell actually is for people who don't code.
Yeah, that's important. Haskell is a purely functional programming language, and it is known for being extremely rigorous.
Okay.
When Aang talks about type-safe programming, you can think of it like an incredibly strict set of grammatical rules for a language. Like zero room for error.
Exactly. In some programming languages, you can write sloppy code, and the program will try to guess what you meant, which often leads to catastrophic errors later on.
Right.
Haskell just doesn't allow that. The rules of type safety ensure that if your logic is flawed, the code simply will not run. It demands absolute precision and foresight from the engineer.
So it forces you to define exactly what every single piece of data is before you use it. Like, you can't accidentally add a word to a number.
Precisely.
Wow.
It is an environment of strict parameters.
Yeah.
And the fascinating thing is how Aang takes this rigid, systematic framework, which is designed for telecom networks and complex math, and he applies it directly to the chaotic, organic world of his biological hobbies.
And this is where we see the software plumber actually operating in the dirt. Look at his series called Notes on Gardening. By April 2026, he is on part 867.
867?
Let that number sink in. 867 documentations of his plants.
And he isn't just taking photos of pretty flowers and saying, look what bloomed today. No, not at all. He is tracking the specific propagation cycles of the blue days. He is experimenting with Brazilian spinach.
Right.
He is restarting the fine-leafed rotala and tracking the growth timeline of the firecracker plant. He is actively analyzing natural light balancing for indoor hydroponics.
Which is incredibly complex on its own.
Exactly. Hydroponics itself is a highly engineered way to grow plants without soil using nutrient-rich water. He is essentially treating the garden like a biological server that requires continuous monitoring and updates.
And we see this systemic approach peak in his fish-keeping logs.
Well, the fish logs are amazing.
Under Notes on Fish Keeping, which is up to part 233 in the same 2-week window, he isn't just sprinkling flakes into a glass bowl.
Right.
He is managing highly complex biological ecosystems. He mentions evaluating water parameters and managing biological filters.
Well, let's actually drill down into what that means, because managing a biological filter sounds incredibly industrial for a home fish tank.
It does, but it is the single most critical mechanism in aquatics. It's known as the nitrogen cycle.
Okay, how does that work?
So when fish eat, they produce waste, specifically ammonia. And in a closed glass box, that ammonia will quickly poison the water and kill everything.
Yikes.
Right. Now, an amateur fish keeper just changes the water and hopes for the best.
That would be me.
Right. But an engineer like Aang cultivates infrastructure. A biological filter is essentially a massive housing project for specific types of beneficial bacteria.
Wait, so he is intentionally growing bacteria to do the work for him?
Yes, the nitrosomonas bacteria consume the toxic ammonia and convert it into nitrites.
Okay.
But nitrites are also highly toxic. So a second colony, Nitrobacter, must be cultivated to consume the nitrites and turn them into nitrates, which are much safer and can actually be absorbed by the aquatic plants like his fine-leafed Rotala.
Wow, so they feed the plants.
Exactly. Aang is actively debugging a biological server. He is constantly measuring the input food and light against the output ammonia and plant growth to ensure the whole system doesn't crash.
And he takes it even further when he discusses his apistogramma.
Oh yeah, the breeding tanks.
For those who don't know, apistogramma are these tiny, incredibly colorful dwarf cichlids from South America. They are notoriously sensitive.
You can't just dump them in tap water.
No. Aang dedicates a whole series of posts to the real cave design for apistogramma and priming the apistogramma breeding tank.
Because apistogramma are cave spawners.
Right.
They won't reproduce unless the environment perfectly mimics the leaf-littered, acidic, slow-moving streams of the Amazon basin.
So he has to recreate the Amazon in his living room.
Yes. He is calculating the geometry of the cave, adjusting the pH of the water, and controlling the temperature flow to trigger a biological response. He is literally engineering a biologically perfect romantic environment for his fish.
Okay, I see the sheer brilliance in that level of control, but I have to push back here because I genuinely struggle with this approach.
Okay, how so?
Well, we tend to compartmentalize our lives. You meet someone and they are a tech person. You know, they speak in code, they love gadgets, or they are a nature person. They hike, they garden, they sit quietly and watch fish swim.
Right, the classic binary.
Yeah, but Aang completely shatters this binary. To him, Haskell programming and Brazilian spinach propagation are just different dialects of the exact same language.
They're all just systems with inputs, variables, and outputs.
Right. But doesn't applying an algorithmic debugging mindset to nature strip away the poetry of it?
That's a fair question.
I mean, if you treat a fish tank like a spreadsheet of ammonia outputs, or you look at a blooming firecracker plant as just a successful execution of a hydroponic script, doesn't that feel clinical? Does turning a living hobby into a data set ruin the magic?
That is a very valid fear, and I think for a lot of people, turning a hobby into a metric absolutely kills the joy.
Yeah, it becomes work.
It transforms a relaxing escape into a stressful chore. But for a mind wired like Aang's the mind of an old software plumber, we have to redefine what magic actually means.
Okay, redefine it how?
Well, for many of us, the magic of nature lies in the mystery. We look at a forest or an aquarium and we are moved by the incomprehensible beauty of it all working together. But for an engineer, the magic isn't in the mystery. The magic is in the mechanics.
Oh, that's interesting.
Understanding the microscopic, invisible war between bacteria in the nitrogen cycle doesn't diminish the beauty of the fish. It elevates the profound complexity of the ecosystem.
Right.
Knowing exactly how many days it takes for a blue daze to propagate doesn't ruin the flower. It fosters a deeper respect for its resilience.
So the data doesn't replace the wonder. The data actually creates the wonder.
Exactly. The deeper he understands the parameters of a system, the more intensely he can appreciate it. It is the exact same reason he was able to stand in that damp nursery and freeze at 5 centimeters away from a dragonfly.
He knew how the system worked.
Yes, he wasn't just looking at a pretty bug. He was observing a perfectly optimized biological system, holding his breath to capture it with his perfectly optimized technological system.
The magic is in the mechanics. I love that framework.
It really changes how you look at things.
So what does this all mean? We started this deep dive looking at a very still dragonfly refusing to move for a camera lens. We looked at a guy wondering if his smartphone was finally good enough, thanks to computational photography, to replace his heavy, friction-filled camera gear.
A seemingly simple dilemma about the evolution of tools.
But by opening the door of that single post, we discovered a digital polymath, a man who leaves absolutely no thought undocumented.
No thought at all.
From the strict, unforgiving rules of Haskell programming to tracking caloric intake to meticulously engineering the water parameters for South American dwarf cichlids, he has quietly built an entire universe on his blog. 2 posts a day, thousands upon thousands of entries, year after year.
And his archive serves as a powerful reminder of the true ethos of the open internet. Knowledge is most valuable when it is understood, synthesized, and shared freely.
Yeah.
Aang isn't hoarding his discoveries. By putting his entire intellectual journey out there under the philosophy of free and open source software, his blog becomes a masterclass in the daily, relentless pursuit of lifelong learning.
It really does.
He proves that every single day holds an opportunity to notice a detail, figure out the mechanics of how it works, and write it down.
It really is a monumental legacy, built one quiet post at a time. Which leaves us with a lingering question for you to mull over today. We live in an era of incredibly fleeting digital moments. We post a passing reaction to a feed, it gets pushed down by an algorithm, and within 24 hours, it completely ceases to exist in the public consciousness.
It's just gone.
We are drowning in a sea of information overload, yet we are starving for lasting context. Meanwhile, this old software plumber has patiently constructed a massive, permanent, searchable library of his own mind.
Yeah.
If future generations, or even just future you, were to look back at your digital footprint 50 years from now, what would they find? Would it just be a scattered, fragmented collection of reactions to things you barely remember? Or would it be a meticulously documented blueprint of your passions? Next time you see something as small and perfect as a dragonfly perched on a lotus bud, ask yourself, how are you choosing to record your world?